I'm happy to be that person. I'm Dan Simon. For those that don't know me, like Shannon said, I'm the tobacco epidemiologist at CDPHE that supports the STEPP program. So today I really just want to go over or provide an overview of quantitative data, what it is, where to find it, how to make sense of it, and then hopefully you can use some of that to inform the work, the important work that you all do. So let's go to next slide. Okay, so first let's just distinguish between primary data and secondary data. Primary data is often qualitative, things like key informant interviews, focus groups, community conversations. You're the ones collecting this type of data for the most part. Secondary data, which I'll be talking about more, is typically collected by someone else, could be national or state level data. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide, please.
There you go, Sam.
You're good. All right. So yeah, secondary quantitative surveillance data. These terms are often used interchangeably. So when you hear any of those terms, I'd say think state or national level survey data. So in Colorado, examples would be like Healthy Kids, HKCS data, BRFIS, the behavioral risk factor surveillance system, Baby and You, which is a relatively new data set. This is formerly the Healthy Moms data, if you're familiar with that. And in terms of tobacco data, we actually we got some questions on the 24-month survey. Not available yet, but will be in the future. And then PRAMS, which is the Pregnancy Risk Assessment Monitoring System, and the Colorado Health Survey or Study, which was formerly TAPS. So those are surveillance data sets or secondary data, or what we would refer to as quantitative data. The benefits, in all these cases, these surveys are taking a sample of the population, so it could be adults 18 or over in Colorado. And if the survey and methodology was sound and we get a random sample of Colorado adults, the answers they provide us to questions like, do you currently vape or something? We can actually estimate what the reality is out there had we been able to talk to every single person that lives in Colorado. So the benefits are that these data exist. They're pretty cool. We don't have to gather them ourselves. We don't need to speak to every single person in Colorado or every single person in your community to know what's kind of going on in a given population. We can just take a sample or a small subset, and then we can make inferences to the population at large. Let's go next slide. Okay, so hopefully we're sharing these slides so you all have access to all these links in one spot. But first place to start when you're looking for these types of data would be the COHID page, the Colorado Health Information Data Set. It's available on the CDPHE website. Sort of think of it as like the landing page for all things data in CDPHE. You can find information from cradle to grave, as it is basically everything from birth defects to deaths to chronic disease. And so on COHID, you can access BRFIS, PRAMS, Healthy Kids data. For Baby and You and TABS, those are hosted in other spots, which I provided links to here. Each data set and dashboard is a bit different. So we don't have the time today to like go through each one. They all have some strengths and weaknesses. Some are more accessible and user-friendly than others. However, I'll just put a caveat in. If you ever have any questions or issues finding data, please don't hesitate to reach out to either me directly or through CPEG or through your STEPP point person, and they can help you or connect you with me. So happy to help in any way. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to preface this slide may be intimidating for some, might be super easy, old news for others, but we all come to data with different levels of experience and background, and that's very much okay. The most important thing, I think, is that like you're curious, open to learning, open to exploring how data might help inform the work that you do. So that's my caveat. Okay, so on any given data dashboard, you're going to find what we call like statistical means or a mean, and then often confidence intervals around those means. A mean is just the fancy word for average. It's the sum of all scores divided by the number of the scores. Um, so in the most recent version of BRFIS 2023, we have the estimate 8.3% of adults in Colorado report current vape use. That 8.3% is what we can think of it as the mean. You may reside in a county or community that has levels above that 8.3%. Your lived reality might be, might be much lower than the 8.3%, but on average in Colorado, we feel confident saying 8.3% of adults currently vape using the BRFIS data. So that 8.3% is the point estimate. That's that single number, the one number that we can point to, that we report out to give us a sense of what's going on in the population. This number, though, is based on, like I said in the last slide or two, a sample of the population. So this is the people, the 10,000 or so people that participated in BRFIS. A confidence interval is us epidemiologists or statisticians or social scientists giving ourselves a little bit of cover. Basically, maybe if we talked to a different 10,000 people in Colorado, maybe that number would be a little bit different. Maybe we'd get 9% or 7.5%. And so the confidence interval allows us to say that, we're 95% certain that the true mean or the reality, like if we had talked to every single person in Colorado, would fall somewhere between 7.5 and 9.1%. So we feel good about the mean, 8.3% for vape use among adults. And we're then really dang certain that we had, if we had the time and the money to talk to every single person, that it would fall between 7.5 and 9.1. So that's like nuts and bolts. You're always going to find, or you should always really find, a mean and a confidence interval on any data dashboard that has quantitative data. Other considerations or questions to ask yourself when you're looking at these types of data is, what level of geography am I looking at? Is this, like on this slide, we're talking about at the state level, 8.3% for the state. Oftentimes you might be able to find it at the HSR level, the health statistics region, sometimes at the county level. Counties and HSRs with smaller populations will have larger confidence intervals and sometimes no reportable data at all. So that's what we would call data suppression. If that's the case for your community or county, I would always suggest reaching out to folks that hold those data, the people that administer the survey, or CDPHE or STEPP or CPEG even, to see if there's any way that you can find reportable data. Sometimes we can give you, a 5-year aggregate. So combine a couple surveys to give you enough people that we can get you some data. So just because it's not shown on online doesn't always mean that it's not possible at all. But that is something that folks that work in communities that are smaller in population, like you'll run into that problem. And then other questions to ask yourself, just more broadly, is like, who do these data represent? Adults, children, youth, pregnant population, who's not represented here? What years am I looking at? Is it just the most recent year? Is it a combined, 5-year estimate? Just things to keep in mind as you're looking at these things. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So So I just wanted to show like a quick sort of demo practice interpretation of looking at data. So here I just pulled a screenshot from the Healthy Kids data dashboard, which I accessed from the COHID landing page. I've selected in step 1 here the most recent year of the survey, 2023. Step 2, I selected tobacco, which is like the health topic. And then from there, you can look at all the measures that relate to tobacco. And I've just selected vape use in the past month. So what I see right away, yeah, keep it there. The mean or the average is 8.7% of high school students. You find that under the Colorado estimates on the left side. If this were live and I was to hover over that number, I'd actually then find the confidence interval, which is 8.2 to 9.3%. And then let's say I'm from Routt County and I want to know what high school vape use looks like in my region. I can, on the right side on the map, can select region 11. You'll see the mean and the confidence interval there in that pop-up window, 13.3%, higher than the state average. But here's like an example of how I might grab some data if I was in Routt County. Yeah, let's go next slide. Okay, now I'm on vision. This is the chronic disease dashboard from COHID. It holds BERFIS data. Here I've selected current smoking, and then I chose to view it by health insurance type. So on the top left, I can see that the prevalence, so again, this is just the mean for smoking cigarettes among adults, is 10.17%, 10.2% in 2023. And then more practice, we're 95% certain that the true prevalence of smoking in Colorado lies somewhere between 9.3% and 11%. And then two more things that stick out. The two groups that have the higher rates of smoking than the state average. So uninsured folks, smoking rates at about 16.5%, while those on Medicaid report even higher numbers, smoking at 22.8%. And those little lines on the bar graphs are those confidence intervals that I talked about for that individual group. So nothing too fancy, but that's what those are showing. A little bit of air on each side. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So ideally, we can use surveillance or quantitative data to reflect on the trends or the areas of opportunity in your community. So data shows higher rates of cigarette smoking among uninsured and Medicaid populations in Colorado. What does that look like in your community? How are you working with those populations? Can you reach those populations? Where might you do that? If you were interested in underage sales of vape products, you could go to the Healthy Kids dashboard, find the percent of youth that report that they weren't refused due to age when they last tried to buy. And so, that might inspire you to look at your current retail licensing requirements or something. So to wrap up, I just want to reiterate, let the quantitative data show the big picture, show what's going on. And then if we want to know the why or how this is happening, this is a great place for the qualitative data to come in. And so I will pass it back to